Welcome to the community talk by the Connect Hut. Today, we are really happy and proud to present Anshuma Kshetrapal, a personality who has been working in the field of psychology, specifically dance movement therapy, which also is, I believe, part of the creative therapy styles that are there available. So, a huge proponent of that, and the amazing amount of work that you have been doing. I fail to understand how you're even getting time to talk to us. So you are Anshuma Kshetrapal is the founding board member and the vice president with the Indian Association of Dance Movement Therapy. She is also the founder of the Color of Grey Cells, a co-founder with the Arts Therapist Club Collab, and also a course director for PG Diploma in Dance Movement Therapy. And I'm sure there is a lot much more, which we hope to get and at least touch the surface and maybe go a bit deeper as well as the conversation progresses. But feel free to add to this, Anshuma.
Oh dear God, I never know where to look when these are being done. So far from it that I'll be adding to it. But whatever comes up, I'll definitely explain these things a lot better. They sound very dull and mundane, but they are far from it. I mean, these are all very exciting positions that I have the privilege to hold. So definitely I'll be explaining as I go along.
Wonderful, wonderful. So to kind of, I guess, start off with, I am aware that you have done a bachelor's in journalism, but then you moved on to a master's in psychology, I believe, and then you have been excelling and you have traveled as well outside the country in pursuit of this. So maybe I should start with your journey, bachelor's in journalism, then psychology. Would you like to maybe even start with why journalism in the first place, and you can take us through or even further ahead?
Sure. So, as an idealistic young one who had a certain vision of the world that she wanted to make come alive, I think there was a certain hopefulness and there was a certain disillusionment that I was following. But I did land up in the media for a while, actually. And I held down several jobs. I was an RJ for a while. I was working with a newspaper for a while. I was with several channels. I was with advertising, PR. So I kind of sampled everything, not for too long. And I suppose the common factor amongst all of them was the idea of the disillusionment. So the conceptual fourth estate versus the reality of at least what was transpiring at that time, which had a lot to do with these 24-hour channels coming in and content becoming very sensational and less about the news. So more and more I'd enter these spaces. There was a lot of censorship on individuals. There was a lot of the loss of the conceptual fourth estate. So that really propelled me into sort of considering alternatives. And when I did that, I realized that my volunteering opportunities, things that I was doing outside of the space, connecting with people, organizing volunteering drives. As a young journalism student, I would do protest marches and I would go ahead and, I'd be aware of various kinds of discrepancies in society, and that then volunteer wherever my privilege would allow me to volunteer. So, those became like much more important to me than my day job. And I just thought that this is not okay. Like, I should be doing something that I enjoy, I like, and I should be organizing my thoughts around figuring out a career out of that. So that's when I decided to pursue a master's in psychology. And
I would like to just stop you there because there's so much. I feel like there's some things to unpack in the journey that you mentioned till here as well. Before we get into the part of psychology as well, before we open those doors. Thank you for sharing that. And when we are talking about this idealistic young person growing up and wanting to, as you mentioned, exercise their privilege and try to learn more about the society, and then also kind of being disillusioned by society and the news that you are kind of encountering as the fourth estate, and realizing that the fourth estate isn't operating as a fourth estate in its regard, idealistically at least. So facing this, and at the same time, changing a lot of jobs in a different way that you mentioned, right? Because that's also a nightmare for a person growing up, changing jobs. Are you supposed to stick around? Are you supposed to keep finding the better pasture? Is that a career move? Is that an idealistic move? All of these challenges is what I'm expecting almost, but please do feel free to take us through that angst. I'm not sure if that's the correct word here, but how please do take us through that as well, because that sounds like a very important part of your development.
I suppose, I mean, the assumption is correct to a certain extent. Yes, there was ample angst. But I suppose that I have been blessed with enough support. There's no such thing as absolute support or lack thereof, really, but there has been enough support, and there's more than support. I think I'm blessed with people around me who have curiosity and are not as judgmental towards my decisions. And I think that has been both a conscious choice as well as just how it worked out for me. So with friends who were supportive and friends who were not so supportive. And I've actually never pursued anything to be liked. That's my number one situation, where I'm not doing something to appear as a certain someone. That's never the case.
You have just followed your passion.
Yeah, I've just followed my passion. And so if I appeared flaky, which I did, I'm sure I did. If you read my CV, I appear flaky.
That's not what I was trying to say. But
I know. I understand.
As part of growing up, I thought this is something I have encountered as well, right? Because I jumped jobs as well, and I've made career switches. Right now, I've made a career switch. But all of these decisions, and kudos for mentioning how close ones to you, if they are having that right kind of attitude with you and being supportive, it doesn't look like you're being flaky, but you're being supported through some real difficult decisions still. But
for sure. I mean, I come from a background where both my parents are doctors, and there's been a very typical sort of professional perspective towards how professions work. So there's profession or there's business, and then there's nothing in between. And then following your passion in a field which has no scope, nothing concrete, nothing set up, was incredibly tough on me. There was a lot of black sheep conversations because of course, there was when you're part of doctor families, it's like a factory. The next generation is becoming doctors, and if not doctors, at least dentists. something
has to needs to be there.
And I chose journalism, and within journalism I chose a umpteen number of jobs, then eventually abandoned journalism. So it wasn't easiest conversations, but I think there was an implicit faith, which I remember my parents at some point saying, whatever you do, we'll know you'll excel. So, that baseline faith that I'm a hard worker and that I will create something, that's always been there. So that way I've been blessed, yes.
Wonderful. And so all these career decisions, like you jumping between the jobs. No, I should probably stop calling it jumping.
Colloquially, you are correct. So it's
the important career moves that you were making to learn and going with the curiosity that you were pursuing. How you somehow reached, you saw the distress, you saw how being a mental health professional, I guess, or learning about mental health is kind of toward, it's almost like a long-term view, right? Now people, I feel, are much more at least literate, aware of the word mental health, and there's a conversation beginning to brew, and there's some effect happening, right? At least if you go as per Instagram posts that are available. So when we are at this crux, and you are kind of ahead of the curve almost, and also not taking away all the stigma that is around mental health. Please take us through your journey.
You say ahead of the curve, and all I could see at that time was behind in the curve, because there were so many people who were making these commercial decisions, who were, buying cars, figuring out FDs, and whereas I was, and still am to a certain extent, the struggler, organizing finances in a very unique way to be able to support yourself in a mental health field. So yes, ahead, but yes, behind from a very
If you look at the general population.
Typical perspective, yeah, absolutely. So in that way, I think, but I suppose everyone is ahead at some point and behind in somebody else's curve. So it's not like I'm complaining, but it's just the perspective. Once I decided I wanted to get into working with human beings, my thing that I have picked up from family is that I don't enter fields or I don't enter anything without being appropriately skilled. And I think that is what led me to do my master's before I started working, because I knew there's lots of, in our country, in an unregulated sector, you can start a clinic tomorrow. You can put 2 sofas and say, this is my clinic. And you could do 1 week of a counseling course, So what is to the credit of where I come from is that there is definitely a lot of background of like, this is the pedagogy and rigor you must go through before you take on ethical work where ethics matters so much. So once I brought that in, of course, my first move was the master's. And I did my master's in Ambedkar University. I was one of the first batches. I was the first batch of the university, actually. So very guinea piggish. But it all worked out. And the course is called Psychosocial Clinical Studies, which to me was very intriguing and set it apart from other courses.
It's almost individual and society together.
Exactly, right. So it was a very systemic view of the individual rather than what other psychologies in other parts of the world that I've now seen and studied seem to do, which is, treat the person as a pure victim or a pure perpetrator that comes out of zero context. But here was a course that really helps you place people in their context. Oh. So that was quite intriguing to me, especially as a journalism grad as well. So yeah, I did that master's and I worked a bunch of years after that as a clinician. And then I found some lacks there, which is when I moved on to creative arts therapies. Do you want me to keep going?
unless there are bits or Easter eggs that you have hidden in somewhere in this conversation.
I mean, this is where I started encountering that perspective of, you're a bright one. Why are you going towards this field? And I really want to point out that unless infrastructure, this is my advocacy side, and you're going to encounter it a lot today.
Feel free.
Fair warning. So unless infrastructure is set up in a way where the cream of the country feels like they want to move to this sector, we're always going to be, have a section of society which is not very interested, is doing it just like a course. It doesn't want to go through the rigor of the practice because it is rigorous.
And how would you even, so I guess this is where I guess I'm asking for the people who are going through this right now, right? What would rigor be, and why is it so important, right? In terms of, I mean, I'm assuming here this is where the experience counts, kind of a thing kind of comes in, and maybe you can shed some light on the rigors that maybe you had to go through, and kind of is almost expected. You kind of mentioned it in a way that we don't kind of fight it, but understand that this is doing good for me and kind of participate in it, kind of a thing. So yeah.
I mean, it's a hard job, Sachin. It's one of those jobs that kind of isn't just, I know, I get a lot of the questions are oriented towards, well, how do you intake information all day? Must be quite painful to keep hearing about painful narratives. And it is, that's one part of the job. But perhaps what is discounted is that we still have daily lives going through our own peaks and troughs. And to amalgamate a side of you or to develop a side of you which is objective to another human being's experience to whatever extent you can, or not even objective, be able to understand that this is my part of my experience and I shouldn't be projecting this onto them, or what from my experience is valuable enough to take to their experience and what has to be held back. These decisions are constant. And unless you situate yourself in a rigorous structure of study, updating your skills, going through therapy yourself, having supervision, unless you're sort of engaging in that structure, it's very hard to have ethical practice. And that's not something that's supported because everything costs money, man. And
I mean, exactly, right? This is me thinking where Um, this is actually a question that one of someone had asked me, right? And this was like, we have MBBS doctors who are opening these clinics where they're charging like $100 for treating you and all of that. And why do I need to pay this much rupees to talk to someone else? And, it's part of that stereotypical conversation that we have around this.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
Maybe, I guess this also becomes part of that stigma that you have to kind of endure, trying to be a counselor or trying to learn psychology for that matter. So, but you kind of didn't stop there. You took one step ahead, and I'll find something even more niche than
I'll
increase the curve approaching.
I'll enhance the stigma on me. What is the other stigmatized field? What is the other thing people don't take seriously? Is it the arts? Let me combine the two. Yeah. That I think that started once I started working as a clinician. What really became important to me was not just what is verbally and consciously being repeated in the narrative as the narrative of the client, but also what is not being said, what is perhaps experienced and then brought to light many sessions later. And I started thinking, is there a way to allow this individual to express something differently? They're expressing in the verbal format, and that's information they already have. They've said this to their friends. They've said this. So what is the difference, right? The difference is perhaps that the contained space, the holding environment, I'm giving them this environment, the safety in which they can open up. But is there also a modality that could enhance that? I found in play, in humor, in all of these very different ways people were expressing something is very difficult. And that really made me curious about these unconscious perspectives and what is consciously known and then what is in the unconscious of the same experience. And that's where I decided to sort of research a little bit and found out about, well, actually many things led me to creative arts therapies. One of which was, I don't want to be a clinician that's sitting for 50 minutes and listening to someone, man, can I do something different? And I decided, okay, I need to.
This is something we have to come back to, okay?
Okay.
I think this is the key part.
Okay. I want to engage my body, and I'm sure other people are also wanting to express using different parts of themselves. So that was one. Number two was when I saw the cultural practices of the country or any other country really that are inclined towards what we would call healing in these practices, they all include the arts. Right? There's all kinds of singing, dancing, drumming. When we're praying, there's all rituals. Everything is inclusive of the arts. And somehow we've reduced psychotherapy to this very corporate, closed-bodied experience, which I found very odd to do. And I thought, surely as a human being, we are inclusive of our bodies.
Yeah.
We should allow the body to also come into the picture in psychotherapy. So that was number two. And number three was just a real curiosity with what happens when, the whole person expresses themselves. When I'm not putting them in a chair and sitting with a notepad, what happens if I change it up? And let's see what comes up. So, yeah.
Okay. And how did you even find it? How did you come across this?
I don't really remember. Sorry, interview's over. No, I think so. I was a dancer for a while in my life. I still am to a certain extent, but a formally trained dancer. And I had a lot of emotional relationship with the art form of movement. And I found myself expressing in my, we've all done this. We're crying. We're like, I don't want to just speak to someone. I want to write some big word, jargonized poetry around this because emotions are not captured in this simple conversation. So I realized that we're all doing it anyway. There must be a pedagogy that encapsulates and is able to bring this into therapy. And so that's where I started researching art therapy, dance therapy, and I found a bunch of wonderful people in the country who do this work.
Oh, wow.
Went through a few workshops, very, very niche field, very in their own bubble sort of a situation. And I attended a course here as well, but I really realized that actually here still the pedagogy wasn't quite developed in those days. And so I decided I'm going to go ahead and risk it all.
Because journalism to psychology wasn't a big enough risk. Let me just make it a bit more
yeah.
unique.
Yeah, I'm reminded of every single professor who's ever interviewed me when I was doing my psychology interviews. And they asked me the same question like you're asking me, Sachin. Why are you taking a risk, beta? Why are you jumping from journalism to psychology? But yeah.
So going with that, that's you kind of going with the gut, if I'm not mistaken. And how do you feel about those decisions so far? And like, what has helped you to stick around with those decisions and change them as well? And then, make another equally, difficult to understand decisions, I guess, maybe where you're coming from?
To be fair, I wasn't isolated and alone on this journey. I had many, many conversations with many people. I actually did research. So part of the Ambedkar University's course is that at the end of the course, you go to this place called Balaji in Rajasthan to just look at how madness is framed in the Indian religious context. And so there are temples there, and there's something called a peshi, which is a presentation of your madness, right? So all of these people come together in a puja, and during the temples, bells are clanging, drums are drumming, and these mostly women who are brought there because they are mad, come together to really exhibit their symptoms. So there's all these kinds of things that came together for me where I was like, this is this, and they're experiencing so much catharsis. What if I was to use this how would I bring this back into therapy and its confines? How do you put these things together? So there was a lot of research. There was a lot of conversation with practitioners. I went on LinkedIn and I wrote to everybody I could find. Hey, I'm interested in becoming a movement therapist, drama therapist. Tell me, what are the courses you've done in your life? There was no like Google search that led me anywhere, man. Like nobody was searching for this. This was not a keyword. It still probably isn't. So there was no search pages. So I had to go through multiple different channels to find courses and find people that were relevant. I wrote to them also. It was a fairly entrepreneurial task. And then I left.
And how did you get the confidence to make such an attempt? I mean, you are not getting a reply. You don't know them. It's not like you're using a jack to get in touch with these people, right? You're, like you said, an entrepreneurial streak. But any tips on that?
I mean, confidence is
not. Probably, what was your thought process during this?
I mean, I was putting my money where my mouth is. I was tired of calling out clinicians and saying, why don't we, and being this angsty person who's saying, why don't we include the body? Why are we sitting and talking? That's what I was saying in my classes. Why aren't we including the arts? What's with the stigma? What's with this? What's with that? And I said, you know what, let's try it out. I mean, if you're really this confident, then that you feel like this is a modality that should work, let's go and experience it. And I think it was a fear-oriented confidence. There's fear just hiding, which is probably true for most confidence. There's fear just behind it that it's probably all going to crash and burn.
There's some amount of bravado there.
Some amount of bravado. Some nicely. I was like, no, just give me your money and I'll do right by it to the banks and my parents and everybody else who contributed. No, I'm so confident. And inside I was like, oh, okay, it's all right. Let's see.
Jump in the ocean without the oxygen mask. But you sink or swim, and you have been swimming well, and you swam across the shore, I guess, and you did your studies for the dance movement therapy.
Drama and movement therapy.
Yeah. And this was, would you take us through that, please?
Sure. So then I got through. I'm not used to talking about myself so much. It's just how these go. I was really waiting to talk about the field, but okay.
I thought you guys had to go for therapy yourself.
Yeah, but this is usually not so visceral and watched. However, okay. So
thank you for sharing, though.
Thank you for having me. So yeah, I like you said, across the shores, risked it all. Went to do my second master's this time. Again, people are asking, why aren't you doing your PhD? What sort of a course setting is this? You've done one master's, ho gaya, move forward. So this typical thing now that once you're done with one subject, you kind of move on to the next linear thing. What is probably more interesting, and again for your students and people who are asking these questions to connect heart, is that perhaps in fields such as ours, it's not so much about studying the next most logical step, but it's about finding what you want to upskill in and finding where is the gap, and after you identify that gap, finding out how can you fill it. So I'm still not done. I'm going ahead and going to do my PhD because
like, is there something more niche than this?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's find that pinnacle, that of specialization. But true, because I want to get into education full time, and so that's my next orientation. So it doesn't matter that I have 2 masters. There's that narrative in our head. Iske baad ye hota hai, iske baad ye hota hai. You have to abandon that narrative when you're creating something from scratch. You cannot just keep following through.
So you're essentially also trying to kind of break the stereotype, if there is one around it now. So how are you managing that as well, right? Because there is this component that you are still identified as a female, I guess, whoever were to question you. And then there is a privilege apparently, but there is also that, issues to kind of deal with when it comes to that. So that comes with the territory. So how do you then, manage having these life-changing, altering decisions and continue to have them? And because being also a female kind of comes in the traditionally has been something that comes in the way, especially of these life-altering decisions, right?
Yeah.
So if you are kind enough to go into that depth as well, please.
Yeah, I think, identifiers are identifiers. As soon as you walk into a room, people have a way of trying to associate you with a journey that may or may not be yours. So there's been a lot of asks around, what about, marriage and children and this and that. And well, I think that's when I'm also breaking those situations where I don't think that every journey is for every person. And I think that whether it's education or personal life or professional life, you really have to find what you're trying to say and then find the ways to articulate it. And so for me, that articulation is coming across through my education, my professional journey. So I'm working on that. So yeah, if questions come my way, as they should, I suppose it's fine. We understand and accept there is that part of society. And that's part of my journey of, being able to sidestep sometimes and being able to have the confidence in saying, actually, I'm very clear in my path. And whatever you're saying makes sense for you. I think that allocation, that's very important. A lot of times when the question is asked, we take it personally.
Yeah.
But for me, I'm always able to sort of say, well, this question is coming from you. It's about the way you view the world. It doesn't have to be mine. So even right now, there are friends who'd say, but you can do this to monetize it and do that. Why are you doing so much pro bono work? Why are you getting involved with so much? And it's true, I am involved with too much. I agree. But
I think that was part of the introduction, but yes.
yeah. But I suppose my allegiance to the field stays true, that eventually that is going to be the moneymaker even for me. Like if we don't have these infrastructural setups, and somebody's got to do it, man. So if nobody's going to do it or take it up and be at the helm of it, eventual payback is going to be oriented towards me as much as everybody else. So I don't mind picking up the mantle.
So that has been, I guess, key in you starting the association for dance movement therapy as well.
Yeah, and all these associations, all these organizations, they have a macro view. I'm not thinking about tomorrow. I'm thinking about forever after that. What is the long-term vision here, and it'll pay back. I'm sure it'll pay back.
Wonderful. So this kind of brings in the entrepreneur and the entrepreneur's love-hate relation. I guess not just an entrepreneur, the way you have spoken, it almost sounds like a social entrepreneur, because that is more of the buzzword nowadays as well.
Yeah.
I have to identify as one as well. So I can sense the pain. Maybe it's just me sympathizing in the wrong area. But, having to manage a monetary side as well. Being an entrepreneur, being in a field which is kind of, as we had kind of unregulated, we had mentioned at the start of the session itself, it's unregulated. So pretty much every single or every other person is a therapist and of some kind, even the astrologer or a
anybody can claim it. Yes.
So even the barber for that matter. I should
Yeah.
stop the comparisons now. So when we have reached this place, so then you are looking to go more niche into learning, introducing body as well into a movement, a modem of communication, if I'm getting it right.
Yeah.
And trying to kind of work with that as well, and trying to set up an organization amidst all of this, and surviving and not making money and not being the doctor that your family wanted. And I can keep on adding to this, I guess. So
Yeah.
how do you manage it? Because at the end of the day, for the present time, right, especially there was this conversation on your peers as well, because I don't think Sachin, I was ahead of the curve. I was probably behind as compared to the regular folks. So this becomes an important discussion in terms of how do you just wake up in the morning not wanting to, oh my god, I should probably stop this and do what was expected.
How do you know I don't? Of course, every morning is like no, I'm actually quite happy with where I'm at, and that has a lot to do with the way I see the field working in practice. I mean, people can say whatever they want to, but in practice, when I'm actually in that clinic, when I'm in my zone, when I'm teaching my students, there's magic happening. There is the modality is working through me. So when you said, the body as a medium of communication, the body is not only the medium of communication, it also has something to say of its own that perhaps has never been said. And so these people who come in, even when they're like, they've worked on themselves for eons and they're, very, very articulate in their experiences, as soon as you touch on the body and the body melts and has so much to say, has been holding on to so much trauma for so long, has finally got a communication of movement or drama or art in some way to be able to speak its own truth. I'm good. I don't feel the need to have to defend it to anyone. It's anyway something that is better experienced than explained. So I really invite people to all kinds of workshops to go through the modality yourself. And if you want to judge it from the outside, okay, that's your journey. But really, you're missing out on something if you don't come in and experience the modality.
Wonderful. Some really wise words there. And to then take us to DMT, unless would you care for a break or something? We have been talking for some time. If you're good, we can just continue.
I'm good. We can finish. I think we have the next 20 minutes, and we'll try to encapsulate this. Yeah.
Perfect. So coming to DMT, drama movement therapy. Tell us about it. Like, what is it? So I'm a noob to this world. So please enlighten us.
Sure. So drama and movement therapy essentially uses the body, the techniques of drama and movement, but it doesn't actually make you do drama or movement in the way that we understand it colloquially, which has a lot to do with performance. It's not got anything to do with performance. It's not somewhere where I'm doing all the myth busting before I come to what it is.
So there's no script, is it?
There is no script. You don't. Sorry. Yeah. You don't. And there is no script unless you write one for yourself. Oh. Yeah. There isn't a script. There is no pedagogy of well-being that I give to you. You practice this movement, you'll feel great. None of that happens. It's simply a way of expression. It's simply a way in which your body allows itself to, let go of so much of the trauma that it's been holding, has been building up. And alongside the verbal part of our experiences, we are always having an unconscious, non-verbal experience because our sensations are picking up all kinds of information. Not just information which is articulatable, but also information which is not verbal.
And this is the interesting, distinction that you made. And I'm sure there will be people who would be interested to know more about this as well, right? Because you didn't mention it wasn't like a conversation on mental health here when we spoke about this. You said that the body had to it was almost humanizing the body aspect of it as well, that the body has to share pain as well. And even the body wants to communicate, which maybe it's not able to communicate using the verbal means. right? So this is quite an interesting concept as well. And if you could just elaborate a bit on this side as well.
So let's use your words of mental health. It's not meant. It's so the idea of mental health is not physical health, right? Even that we've created these binaries in medical language, which is this is physical health, this is mental health, this is how it should look, everything in its neat little bracket. But human life refuses these binaries really. Everything you're experiencing is being experienced by the body, is being stored by your sensations. There's a certain memory to your body which is beyond the memory of your mind. The mind is within the body. The mind is not located in the brain. The mind is everything that is felt and experienced in that moment. There is a certain ineffable quality, an unconscious, intangible quality experienced of every single traumatic event or normal events also.
And right? This is that unconscious bit. So there is the part that you have consciously registered in case of a trauma. There is the conscious registration of it. And then there is the unconscious registration and storage of that trauma as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's done because your body is keyed into its surroundings to protect you, because it wants to create safety. So it's storing information to say, if I start sensing this again, run. If I start sensing this again, I won't be in that situation.
And it doesn't matter what the situation is. If your body gets the trigger, you run.
Right? So many of my clients are people who've been in talk therapy for so long, but somehow they're saying the same things, they're talking about the same things. It's not getting to a place where they want to be, which is to have some release or relief, etc. And so we start to look at the alternative of what have you not been saying? What have you not been expressing or not expressed enough through your verbal communication? And what still remains behind, and how do we help you express that?
This almost seems like an area that may be in bereavement and grief. I guess this can be a very common thing as well, because it just stays, and it's just there's that repetition that can come in a lot.
Grief, anxiety, OCD, depression, you name it, but also any emotional difficulty. I mean, trauma is anything that overwhelms your coping faculties, right? It could be anything. So I don't decide the trauma when you walk into my clinic. You decide that there has been trauma, or we decide together when we name that, these were the coping faculties and this tiny bit extra happened and I felt really traumatized. So it doesn't have to be a checklist of this is met and then you are traumatized. Otherwise, sorry, please get out of my clinic. Right? There are no checklists, in fact. The idea is the client is the center of the work, and they hold the key to the narrative and the key to their own resilience. I don't teach them any techniques.
Come on, you can give them some quick solutions, right?
Oh dear God, man, Sachin, it's my everyday struggle. How many times I have to answer that question? Can you just fix me? Kitna time lagega? How much do I have to pay you to fix me? I'll pay extra. Do it in 3 weeks. Right? And
but so plus, don't give me homework.
Yeah, there's a capitalist notion to the service you provide, right? That this is how much it should cost. This is how much, and if it costs this much, you should be able to give me this much.
My mental health is worth this much.
This is how much I'm able to allocate per month, and that's all. That's all you get. Now fix me. Yeah.
UPA.
Hardly. Even when I went through the modality myself, when I was in London, I trained for 3 years and I worked extensively in schools, colleges, prisons. I worked in domestic violence settings.
Are these paid jobs you're talking about? Okay. So this is going to be a controversial area as well. Paid internships or works, and are we supposed to be getting into that conversation, or are we looking at work experience? Get the damn experience.
I'll tell you what. I feel retrospectively work experience makes a lot of difference. But in that moment when the money is exiting your pocket to pay for that ticket of the bus that you need to go and do your internship, you know the pain of that moment. I think that we should make a move towards paid internships, especially because at the same time when I was doing this, my contemporaries were getting paid thousands of dollars to sit in Amazon and watch IPL on their laptops because, that was their internship. Whereas I was traveling and listening to these stories and trying to do some mental health work, which was supported, sometimes not supported. There was a lot of other things, factors. There was a lot of colonization around the field. It was not culturally relevant to where I was coming from. There was some amount of racism in the subject matter itself at the time. I'm talking like 10 years ago. Now there's been a lot of conversations around how to decolonize the work. But at that time, there was inherent racism in the work.
Could you expand a bit on decolonizing of the work itself? Where do you think the work needs to be done? And where do you think it is stuck?
I think the work has to come from where you are, where the client is located, and not from where the person who conceptualized it was located. Now, I'm not discarding that. There is a lot of value in studying the concepts, but then the application has to happen on the ground with the person, and you cannot discard what the individual is bringing, which is perhaps much more relevant in the room. And so decolonization in that regard would be a bit to move away from Western narratives and pedagogies of illness and what it looks like, to really come back to where you are located and what does it mean to be normal or dysfunctional or this or that in that scenario, and then come from there.
So that even moving away from diagnoses a bit and kind of just accepting the person that this is not necessarily a diagnosis, this is the general life pattern of this person that it's going.
Otherwise, you'll pathologize everything. Na? You'll pathologize the need for touch and affection, because therapy you can't touch, right? But that doesn't mean the need won't come into the room, because culturally it is a relevant need. So how do you address
it? Quite an interesting thing, because there is, at the same time, there is a movement for increasing, acceptance of pills in the mental health field, because there is a lot of stigma. And then there is also this conversation on how this is also pharmaceutical pressure kind of coming out in a capitalistic world. And then, as a mental health professional yourself, you kind of have to it's almost expected that you are going to have to take the side of analysis, diagnosis, prescription, betterment, kind of a model. But you seem to be singing a different tune here. Would you like to elaborate a bit?
I don't sing any tunes. I sing the tune that the person in front of me needs me to sing. And in that way, I have certain modalities and I have certain caps to my competence. I don't go into areas where I don't feel competent. I have a very strong referral pathway. If I feel like a medication is required, it's not my space to do anything about it, but to refer. If I feel like some other behavioral component is required, whatever's required. That's what it means to keep this client at the center of your work. That you don't go ahead and overcompensate on your lacks by pretending and by setting up something lavish where you're not able to really deliver. So set up yourself in an ethical format, and you'll be fine. You don't have to ascribe to a certain field or something outside of the room. Whatever's happening is happening live. Just be in the moment and stay true to it.
That's again very wise words. Thank you, Anshuma, for.
Dear God, I have to stop with the wisdom.
No, please do. Please feel free to continue with them as well. So coming to drama movement therapy, this has been something that you have been part of for some time now. In fact, vice president of the association and the founding board member as well. How has your experience been? What, and you're saying that I'm not done yet. I'm looking at going further. So, how's your journey been in this, especially in India as well? Any challenges that you can talk about? And also, why still here, right? Like, that means that there is some good reason. You seem like a very smart person, right? So you obviously have your reasons to continue doing this. So there is some benefit that you are getting. And you had kind of mentioned that you didn't want to sit for another 50 minutes and just have that one-on-one counseling where there could be more work done. So is that what your discovery has been? Is there more that can come out? And why would you recommend it further?
First of all, are you implying that if I was smarter, I'd leave?
No, not at all. Not at all. I'm just appreciating your smartness.
Okay, all right, fair enough. I think that when I came back to the country, so my training was my training, and I got a plethora of experience there. They do really like outside. There's no spoon feeding there. There's none of those typical formats of education. It was pretty much like, here are the hours, go complete them. You do 80 hours of this and 100 hours of that, and finish this in 3 weeks. So there was a lot of rigor in that, and I really felt like by the end of it, I felt like a clinician in practice. It wasn't something I'd studied theoretically, but I'd gone ahead and met these people live. I'd done this work, and I'm open and ready to do it. And then I came back to India, and I was like, oh my God, I can't. Because it's a completely different playing field. There was no organization waiting to invite me. There was nobody who was willing to listen to me. I met a lot of people who outrightly rejected me. I heard terms like, तुम्हारा काम तो nurse कर लेती है, why do I need to give you money? I have no time for this, get out of my office. And these were my initial encounters with some very well-known names. And I'm trying not to drop those names here, right?
Are we looking at the editing facility that we've got?
I mean, there was. No. I'm good. I'm good. Okay. I still have to exist in this environment, right? No, honestly, I feel like there's been a lot of growth from then. I'm talking 10 years ago, So from then to now, there has been a lot of growth. And I do feel like the pandemic, I know it's going to sound horrible, but has led to a lot of growth in people relooking at mental health. And all of Instagram is about mental health now.
Hashtag psychology facts.
Oh, hell yeah. So all of those things have really propelled the field forward and have brought a lot of change. But initially, it was hard. It was hard to be taken seriously. When you bring together nexus of something that is frivolous arts and something that is niche and unnecessary, mental health, and you combine that into one person, that person becomes, well, unimportant, just fringes of society experience. Places where I used to be mainstream were suddenly discrediting me, disqualifying what I had to say. But I found my people, I think. I found 3 first, 2, then 3, then 4, then 5, now 11. We're still at 11 in 10 years. 11 people who are qualified practitioners, came back to the country with the same experience. I was lucky enough to associate with them. I was lucky enough that they had the same goals, same visions, similar ethics, ethos of practice. They wanted to see this become big in the country. They were willing and able to give money and time to the cause. They were developing courses alongside me. So very quickly we started realizing, until there is formal training in the field, none of us are going to get clients. None of it's going to happen. There's no employability. Nothing is going to increase. So we started developing courses, first certificate, now diplomas, hopefully eventually master's programs in the country for arts therapy. So I'm doing that with a number of institutions.
All the best with that.
Thank you. And then, of course, the association was required as a medium of communication between the nodal agencies of the media, the government, that won't listen to you if you're shouting from your rooftops. So yeah, that's how the association came to be.
So wonderful. And these are essentially the challenges that you are going through. And today, why DMT for anyone listening, right? And maybe we can kind of round up with what are your hopes for DMT in the future as well. But why would anyone listening would consider DMT to be something relevant to step into right now? And what kind of things do you expect for them to learn, I guess?
Why for me is a very simple answer. If you've seen it work, you can't not see it anymore. It's one of those things. You see it once, you'll see it everywhere. That the body, the movement, the way human beings want to express themselves is beyond words. Trauma is rampant. It's something that people are normalizing a lot. And if you're a practitioner, you wouldn't want that to happen to your environment. So you'd want to do something about it. So why has some amount of activism to it? But also there is a lot of pleasure seeking from by different things that I do. I think that as an educator, I draw the most pleasure from seeing this thing go out into the world. If one person I'm educating, I know, and in a proper way, who has an ethical degree and a diploma, that person will get a job. So they will educate so many others. Wherever they apply, they'll talk about the field. Then those people will have clients, so there's a mass effect, and we really need to reach a critical mass in order to do anything about it. So that's my personal why. Why for the person who's never experienced this is, well, why not? It does feel like that we've spent far too long in this very Victorian view of the body. It's something to be covered, it's something to be shamed, it's something to be, kept in a box. But as soon as you honestly start to experience the release, if you really allow your body to express itself, if you just wanted to get up in the middle of this meeting and just shake, just because you were carrying all that anxiety, imagine if that was allowed, wouldn't that be a wonderful planet where we were all allowed to some extent?
There would definitely be a lot of laughs there. I can definitely imagine a lot of laughs happening, which is always good. I'm not complaining about it. But
we've spent far too long in doing this, instrument bana diya, tool bana diya. Body is an instrument for your goals. You get up in the morning, you have to do this body, you have to do that body. When is the time to listen? Where is the time to express? And I genuinely think, this is going to sound very big, but I genuinely think it makes the world a better place if you just allow for more expression, and for genuinely, there's going to be less pathology. If we start this at an early age, we step away from that Victorian view of the body and allow the arts to come in, we've left play so far behind. Play is not a capacity only for children. Play is part of our everyday life, and being playful is a wonderful thing for your mental health. So try it.
Yeah, there you go. More wise words coming. Thank you so much, Anshuma. And again, and this, I don't know, listening to you, just some of these passing thoughts kind of came in as well, where we are currently kind of in a world where a lot of importance is kind of put into how you look and all of that, and your body. So there's this constant microscope that is kind of you're put under. But at the same time, the thing that you're ignoring the most is the body as well. So there's that living paradox kind of going on as well. And you seem to be one of the warriors who's kind of building that bridge where giving body a medium to express themselves. And you've got 11, and I hope there's 1,000 and 11,000 and a million more there to kind of help you in that.
Well, the good news is, I have to announce this on this platform. The good news is that it's not just movement therapy now. So movement therapy and art therapy gained recognition by the government as of 25th May 2021 due to the efforts of our association. But also, as of last week, we're registering the Drama Therapy Association now. So we're really hoping that the movement gains momentum and more art forms come to the fore as relevant methods of therapy.
Wonderful. That's amazing news, and I think myself, Connect Art, and I think all the people here as well would love to congratulate you and wish you all the best in continuing that great work. And what I would like to do is maybe let's just see if anyone in the audience has any questions, and to see if you can address them as well. So if anyone has any questions, please feel free to ask. If you would like to be anonymous, you may even feel free to share the question in the chat and we can read it out.
Right. Hi, Anshuma. Thank you so much for being so open with the conversation. It was really lovely hearing you. And many congratulations on the association as well. Thank you so much, Sachin, for facilitating this talk. It was absolutely wonderful. So there is something that on my mind. I actually have two questions. While reading about dance movement therapy, I came across some presumptions in the field. Some of movement is a form of communication was one. The other was that movement can be used as an assessment tool or mode of intervention. So I was just wondering if you can expand a bit more on these principles.
Sure. So they are partly assumptions, but they're also partly proven scientific fact. In the way that the body communicates is through various movements of our muscles and tendons. So, for example, if you take any emotion, right, how does the emotion translate into the body? Perhaps there's a tightening or a loosening with relief, or there's some format in which the body naturally moves as soon as there is an emotion. It doesn't have to do with movement, which is big and performative, but I'll probably blink my eyes faster if I'm anxious or breathe shallower. So the body's movements are consistent with the emotional state. So this is just a scientific fact that movement is a way in which the body communicates an emotion. Now, what we do in movement therapy is essentially exaggerate on those particular themes and say that perhaps, this is the way you're experiencing this particular emotion. Would you like to tell me more? How does your body feel at this moment? What is it holding? If you were to try and release it, what would that look like? So it's simply a natural extension of something that's already happening. What was your second assumption that you would point it out?
Yeah, so it talks about movement as an assessment tool or a mode of intervention. So I was just wondering how you intervene, but you did talk about release.
Well, intervention doesn't necessarily have to do with release. Intervention could simply be sometimes developing the capacity and resilience to stay with it. It doesn't always mean that we're always working with our clients to get them out or save them or any of that. But sometimes you're in a tough spot, or for some reason you're having to follow through on certain things that you have to do in life. And while I'm in this, how do I develop enough resilience so that my body is not feeling heavy and traumatized and exhausted all the time? May not have to do anything with release. It may have to do with resilience. It may have to do with not being triggered as often. There are various goals that come in, and those are the assessment tools that we use. That when you come in, I work with you to understand, okay, so your body responds to the world in this way, and what is it that your world is made up of, and what do you need? And then we do design the intervention.
Sounds so lovely and intriguing almost. I have one more question that I wanted to ask. Your website said that the role of the therapist is to mirror, empathically observe, and acknowledge movements. And I guess I've not been in a space of dance and movement, so it was difficult for me to visualize how can you observe empathically or acknowledge movements. How does that happen?
I'm wondering if you had a wonderful conversation with your friend face to face. You would have noticed in that conversation, when you receive listening, really compassionate listening, you start to mirror each other. You're nodding at the same time. You start to breathe together. When you cry, she pauses and she waits for you to finish. She doesn't rush to save you or whatever. Or she offers some compassion which you need in that moment. You've experienced those moments, right?
Yeah.
So that's essentially what's happening in a much more pedagogized and safe way. We are trained to not bring our own judgments, rush into any movement. We are trained to sit with information and respond to it in the way the body needs response in that moment. So that empathy is very kinesthetic. It's a very body-based empathy that we provide. Sometimes it's natural to, even sometimes we've danced with our clients. It's just like the way you're moving, I like to move in the same way. We're mirroring each other. Don't we feel good when people dance together and mirror each other's movements? Why does that happen? Your neurons are activated. You're speaking to each other. There's empathy. There's connection there. You're creative in that moment. So all of these different factors come alive when you move together. So that's in principle, that's what we're taking forward.
Wonderful, lovely. It just sounds like such a beautiful space to be in. Thank you so much, Anshuma. Those were my questions. Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Hi. My name is Akram. Thanks a lot for your insight. Unfortunately, I'm not that educated in this topic, so I think I might have to do some reading before I can ask any question. But I wanted to maybe ask something regarding what you mentioned. So you mentioned how so trauma is being kind of like normalized. I don't know. I don't remember the term that you use, but So what I wanted to know, so I mean, I think I understood what you meant by it, but what I wanted to know is like how we as as maybe mental health professionals, but like but as a responsible person, because so it's our job to maybe be create a healthy atmosphere, especially for mental health. So how can we what can we do to avoid this, or like how to make a situation that this doesn't happen?
Well, thank you, Akram, first of all, for listening so intensely that you picked up on this one nugget that I just dropped randomly. But yeah, I think that's a very important point, to take ownership to create safe environments around us. What is it that we can do to not normalize trauma? And I think it begins within us, that we start normalizing. In order to survive something, we start telling ourselves, this is normal, everybody goes through it. Why am I having such a bad reaction? Our inner critics come up and they say, you are the one who's the problem. Everybody can deal with this. You can't deal with it. That language that we speak to ourselves in, if we start to work on noticing it and then asking, hang on, why am I being so harsh? Let's not try to normalize this. I'm feeling certain emotions. Can I be true to that state and say that, yeah, I'm feeling this and I don't want to feel this? Can I seek help at the time when I can seek help? Can I ask the appropriate channels? First of all, it begins there. And then secondly, the same sort of language that we use with each other, especially in the pandemic, people went through so much grief. All I saw around me is it's happening to everyone. So what? That does not minimize the other person's pain just because it's happening to other people. Pain is pain. And I think so, when you extend that same compassion that you're trying to bring in to somebody else and allow them to speak about their pain without rubbishing it, minimizing it, without saying it's not important, there's something very beautiful about that expression that's allowed there.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you, Anshuma, for that. And thank you, Akram, for the question as well. Would there be any, should we say just the last question? Because I think we have kind of exceeded on the time, I guess. Any questions at all? Otherwise, thank you so much. I guess there is no question coming up. So I can probably stop with the recording as well.